Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Pantheon. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Caspian's circumstances. Obviously, he ended up getting in contact with Maddie because Maddie was dealing with the whole situation with her dad, and then Lori, showing up because Maddie got to see her dad's circumstances for what they are. And it's very reflective of Chanda's situation. At least, because Chanda was, kept in this, reboot of the same day over and over again, and the same thing was for David. So, but it's I guess once you're broken free of that system, how they have you designed, they want you to seem as normal as possible, because if you notice your body's misshapen or whatever, and I guess that's almost supposed to be identifiable with you not knowing who you really are, because Chanda was like that when the others were visiting him. But I also got the answer now. I kept going back and forth. So yes, because it was a completely different company that had nothing to do with logarithms, that should have been enough, but I still kept going back and forth. So Lori had nothing to do with helping out Chanda. Those were people who were failed, other victims of Ajits, who just, whatever remnants of them remained came to help him. Ghost in the machine, essentially. The remnants of them, they're like spirits haunting the digital space, because they're all that remains of these people. Lori was off recovering because the attack on logarithms took a lot out of her. So we'll circle back to the Kim family side of things along with the Lori stuff. But it got Maddie getting into contact with Caspian, so they're both calling from phones that aren't their own. Just Maddie calls from Justine's, and it's okay, I'll get you the mint thins that your mom's asking for, because you're saying it's the Girl Scouts. So I'll get you the thin mints and the Samoans. And it's yeah, because it's you're kind of the only person I can turn to right now, because you're kind of my only friend right now. And I love that when Maddie promised okay, the thin mints and the Samoas, that Justine just kind of taps her hand and is good girl, okay, cool, and just leaves her alone with the phone. But they finally have their conversation back and forth, because Lori reached out to Caspian a while back, and how they first started talking, because there was a math problem. There was some kind of problem that was on the dark web he solved, and I guess Lori was looking for anyone that might have been smart enough to help her, and that's how she got in contact with Caspian. And the moment Maddie presented that chat log with her dad, and he noticed the similarities, because she was the same way. She never talked in English. She only talked in emojis. So that's what kind of set that parallel up for him. But obviously, Lori kidnapped David and was saying oh, this is all his fault, which immediately I'm wait, did David kind of pioneer a lot of this and he just doesn't remember? But it's no, Steven's the one who pioneered it, but I guess David took some advancements in it. But it seems I was about to say maybe he just doesn't have the memories of his involvement in all of that. He is, I was maybe he helped logarithms do this to other people, maybe even Lori, and he just doesn't remember. But it seems that's not the case. It just seems right, my department of what I handled microchips and stuff, I didn't do anything with all this upload intelligence stuff. I also had to correct myself from last episode, because I was I couldn't remember if he willingly did the whole upload thing. Based on what Ellen says, it's yeah, he did actually do it. He was dying, and he was seeing this as a second opportunity, a chance, so he took it, which, like I said, we'll dive into that more. So I just want to kind of get some of those corrections out based on some of the stuff I said last episode that I wasn't 100% sure about. But either way, Caspian starts becoming paranoid about his world, because of what Maddie says, Lori said you were being watched 2 weeks ago. And so he's looking online. He's okay, he's trying to run a scan, and it's oh, and the scan come a virus scan, or a Trojan horse scan. And it's nothing comes up, and no spyware. And it's well, of course it doesn't, because we know they can affect everything on your damn computer. You found their I didn't talk about it at the last episode, but it's yeah, you found their the main hub for all of this in Norway. And then while you were trying to get a screenshot of it, they deleted it from your computer. You're what the fuck? So yeah, they have control over your computer, so of course they can make it seem there's no spyware here that you're gonna find. And then I started getting a little weird vibe from Hannah, because she's oh yeah, the fact that she immediately, because Caspian's yeah, this is gonna sound weird and paranoid, but he's for so long my life just never felt real. He's because she's oh, did it have anything to do with your dad? And the moment she said that, I was why would you say that specifically? I mean, I guess it makes sense because of like the abusive situation with his dad, but it just like, it didn't come from that place. It just felt weird that that's immediately what she said. It's like, I mean, I guess, well, I mean, from one perspective, it's like understandable. I don't know if that's just me retroactively feeling weird about it. But it caught me off guard. Why would you say that specifically? And like the fact that she kept pushing, like she tried not to push too hard, but it almost felt like I'm pushing, but trying not to push too hard. Oh, I'm gonna push back. Like it felt like that too much. And so he was like, yeah, like he's felt like that ever since his dad was around, but ever since his dad left, he hadn't felt like that until Maddie brought it up of like, yeah, your life isn't what it seems. So he's kind of worried about that and concerned about it. And at the same time, there's a whole thing with Carrie. He goes back, reports in, and they're like, one of the people is like, hey, congratulations, got a t-shirt with #1 on dad on it. It's supposed to be a joke, but Carrie was not amused by it. It actually pissed him off. And so now he's getting debriefed about everything. He's talking about how Renee is unreliable. She's kind of crazy, so you can't trust her. And she's like, fuck you. I'm the only one holding this down. I'm the one that keeps my shit together. And one of the people, she's like, oh yeah, I think you're right. Renee is crazy, but I also think you are too. She's like, this project is stupid from the beginning. You guys should have been terminate from the beginning. It's like, wait, terminate Caspian? It's like, she's the one that kind of lets a lot of shit. Because she's the one that's kind of like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to hold my tongue with a lot of this. But it's like, so they were going to initially kill Caspian. I guess it was just kind of like, it was too much trouble. But I guess it's like, whatever his circumstances are. Because I'm assuming that, well, because there's that Parasite comic that's kind of like, there's parallels between that and him to some extent, that I'm like, are you going to cut yourself open and find there's something else? He does that about it. He guts his CPU to find out, there's logarithm like tech inside of it, obviously, but it's not, so I think that's as far as that goes, but I feel like there's still probably even deeper parallel to, because what they're trying to set Caspian up to be is something that he's not. So, or at least something that he's not aware of that he is. Like, there's something else there. And I guess I'm wondering if the monster inside of him, once again, is Steven or just what that is. I'm driving myself insane trying to theorize about what Caspian's deal is. I've thrown it out every previous episode, and I don't know what I keep flip-flopping on, like, could it be this, could it be that? Like, I've kind of put out my main theories, especially, I did it again last episode, but it's like, I can't stay on one. My mind keeps flip-flopping, like, oh, it seems like it's more likely this, but then it's like, oh, maybe it's more likely this. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to find out what that's all about, but him, like I said, him gutting his, the topic I was on was, Renee and Carrie, because we got to see the beginnings of that. And it's like him being kind of almost this proud papa. He's like, oh, and him being like a legitimate dad in that moment. And Renee was kind of like, hey, you need to cut that out. He's like, come on, I don't have to be an asshole to the kid until he's 8. So it's like, oh, so Carrie legitimately was the father. Like, he gave this fatherhood thing a try, and it's like, then like at age 8, a kid's like, all right, now I have to be an asshole to you so that you can grow up in this adversity and grow. It's like basically making a diamond. What do you need? You need a lot of pressure to make a diamond, and I think that's what it is. They're trying to mold him from coal into a diamond, and they're trying to put him in heightened pressured situations to test him and push him and mold him into the diamond they need him to be. So, and in fact, Renee's also like, yeah, but we're not going to have sex. So it's like, yeah, it's like okay, this is a very platonic, like, we're working together thing. And he's just like, the fact is, he's like, I don't care about this body. So I'm assuming this is about, I'll just circle back to it being about the upload then. It must be about perfecting it, because I guess they're all people that are all about this cause, because it's all about what Steven had envisioned about, because Renee obviously being super close to him, and I'm assuming Carrie's the same way, not just being like, I think that is it was probably someone he legitimately did care about, just like Pope cared about him as well. So it is about Caspian getting to the point that he can finish Steven's work, and they could finally fully integrate the whole UI situation, uploaded intelligence, and kind of make it more consistent and not like there's a chance it could super fail and we don't have to just obliterate the human brain and mind just to download your consciousness and just all that you are. So I guess, because the way he was talking about oh yeah, this flesh, this body means nothing to me, but till then I'm going to play the role of the dad, and he was kind of happy about it. And now that that's kind of been taken from him, it's like, and he's trying to warn everyone. It's like, I know that kid. That kid, he finds out none of this is true, that he's going to lose his shit. And it's like, later on, he kind of finds, he was right. That he's like, this is all one step away from falling apart. Because he's like, I've raised this kid. I've been in this kid's life for the past 17 years. I know him, you know? So they just kind of relegated him to like, hey, we'll put your concerns out there. Don't worry about it. Just leave us your debrief and we'll look over. And then he immediately like tries to go back. He tracks down a driver because he probably knew like if he took any of those cars, there's probably trackers in that and stuff like that. So they know exactly where he was to bring him back. So I was kind of worried last episode. I didn't say anything, but when he was done with his mission, I thought they were going to kill Carrie. But it's like, no, they don't need to do that, but they might need to do it now before he really gets a chance to talk to Caspian and warn him about everything. But for Caspian, it's like, in one fell swoop, he finds out his entire life is a lie. And not just his mom, not just his dad, fucking Hannah too. I was like, I should have known. I knew something was off. But the fact is, when she looked at his bruised fist last episode and didn't say anything, like it's just, she was on, like, she didn't have this look of like a concern or anything, like, oh my God, I can't, it's like, she was just like so like not indifferent, but it was just kind of like this very, what's the word? Like very static look on her face where it was just kind of like, okay, like she was so accepting of it. Then I was like, something's off about that. It's like, so she was the whole, because it did seem like she did extremely go out of her way to get close to Caspian. And it's like, right, now you find out your mom's a part of all of this. She's been a plant in your entire life. And Hannah, the girl that you super fell for, that you liked, is like, oh, cool. That wasn't even real either. And she's meant to keep an eye on you. In one fell swoop, his entire life turned upside down. You're like, that's super fucked, homie. And I'm curious what's going to happen when Carrie does track him down and it's like, hey, we're in this together. Like, I'm not going to let them do whatever they're going to do to you because regardless of anything, he's probably going to see his father in a different light because it's like the abusive piece of shit I've been these past few years, potential 11 years. It's like, no, that was me playing a role. No, it's 10 years, 9 to 10 years. But it's like, I love you genuinely. So he might not get a chance because if Renee probably has a way, if he gets too close, Renee will probably be like, motherfucker, I'm gonna put you down. Like you're hindering this plan because it's bigger than everyone. It's bigger than us. Kind of who cares about Caspian's feelings? Regardless of how he feels, he's a part of something much bigger, and that's what we should be focusing on. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. The opening was wild with the Chanda situation. I was like, you're not gonna kill Ajit's entire family, are you? Oh, you're super, because like the moment like the gas tank started pumping out gas, I was like, oh, I figured you were gonna like, I didn't know if you were gonna try and trap him in the shower. I mean, it's like the door probably wasn't, the temperature for the water and stuff was like obviously like regulated by a computer system, but the doors aren't like, they're just regular glass doors, so it wouldn't do it. You couldn't lock him in there. But I was like, are you really about to kill that entire family? And he does. And I'm like, that's sad. I mean, I get, but the whole point was to make Ajit pay double. It's like, oh, I'm going to basically take everything away from you. I'm burning this building to the ground. Your family's trapped in it. I basically trapped your son in the pool. Your wife and daughter couldn't get out, you know, and it's like, right, you brought this upon yourself. And now they had to pay the price for your sins, you know? And it's like, that's why I kind of felt bad. I'm like, they're innocent people. They're not the ones who did this to you, Chanda, but it's not just him. Other people, like he's kind of, I think he's the active voice for everyone else's rage. And it also plays very nicely with the episode too, because of the whole Lori and David situation, which we learned that the more that they process stuff, the more heavier processing they do, the more their minds deteriorate. And it makes sense. And like, the brain is a computer. What can computers do? They can super overheat. And yeah, there's like, I think your brain, I mean, and I'm talking out of my ass here. I don't know the like biology and like the science of it, but it's like, you know, there's always been that thing of like, oh, you only use like 10% of your brain or some shit like that, which I think has always been something that has been debunked. But the thing is, your brain like can be utilized up to a certain extent, because if you overprocess it, it would like melt and burn out just like a computer would. And that's what's happening here. And I'm wondering, did the same thing happen to Chanda because he was pushing himself? Or is it just because he doesn't have the good emotions tapped into the emotions he had? It's like kind of like rather than like focusing on like, here I go, Kingdom Hearts reference of the week. it's kind of like the nobodies. All they ever focused on when it came to like the heart was like the pain, the anger, the sadness. It's like, yeah, but that's not all a heart is. A heart is so many other emotions as well. All of them together collectively make a more balanced heart, you know? And so, you know, David has a multitude of emotions. He has his jealousy. He kind of has his little bit of his anger, but he hasn't really showcased it. Well, it's there a little bit. I think it kind of showcased a little bit in this episode, but it's also about love. He's got a more well-rounded heart, and I think him and Lori do. And Chanda, all he has is, he never probably, like, he got his memories back, but it was more so specifically about what happened to him. The memories that triggered him coming back and gaining his self again, was like what happened to him. And he's like, so his anger that's probably the main and might be the only emotion of his that's really back. So that's why he's not like, that's all he has driving him is anger. Whereas the others had other facets and elements of their hearts in place. So I love the whole Cody thing, rolling up on their place and then getting like getting sprayed in the eye. And I love later on they give him the eye drops and he's like, yeah, thank you about that. I'm like, yeah, you're thanking them for like helping you out after you like busted in their place with like pretending you had a gun when it was just a flashlight in your jacket. But he came looking for Lori because he thought maybe they had something to do with it. So he kind of explains a little bit more about him and Lori's circumstances. And it's sad, you know, because it's like, right, she's always been like this business person making a lot of people money, and he's always been an artist. She changed so much, but him, he's like, I've always kind of stayed the same. And obviously coming in kind of conflict with that. It's the thing of like, right, you need to grow together in a relationship. And for him, he was frustrated that, right, we never, what decision, like, I'm never in the driving seat. She's like, well, you're in the driving seat right now. It's like, you know what I mean. It's like, what choices have I ever made in our relationship? Like, what choices were mine? And it wasn't until she was looking through the computer, I think she realized, like, right, I've been so focused on work, I kind of have let, like, the relationship side of me slip. I've kind of let go of, like, right, the Lori side of me. And so it's like, oh, you know, it's like he had gotten, like, probably like a vinyl of a particular song that they really liked. And they were about to hook up on the side of the road. I thought when that was about to happen, I thought like Ellen was going to be like, you could skip all this, right? You know you're having this conversation for my daughter. But then it immediately leads into the accident. And Logarithms approached him. It's like, hey, we can have your daughter. I keep saying the wrong words. Your wife, we could have her back and you could be with her forever. And then they said like, oh, it failed. But Lori reached out to him, and little by little, she started communicating and being able to show herself. And so they ended up becoming a team. It's like, I became her hands in the physical world. And then she eventually found out about David, someone else that was like her. Because, so it does seem like, currently speaking, the only quote-unquote successes that seem to be out and about are David, Lori, and Chanda. And even Logarithms, I wasn't sure if there was anyone else that had done this to. They probably have like Ajit, there's probably been other failed examples of failed attempts at Logarithms as well. But it seems like Lori and David are the only successes. So answers a previous question I had, wondering how many people Logarithms done this to. Probably done it to quite a few people, but they've only had 2 somewhat successes with, you know, all of this. So because Cody had talked about Lori being a little off, that she's like more angry and she's kind of not herself. And now it enters that conversation with Ellen about, you know, because Ellen talks about when David died, she was kind of pissed at him because she's like, at least if he died, he could die by his own choice and he could also be surrounded by family, kind of choosing this other option, especially knowing how she felt about the whole UI uploaded intelligence angle. Like it just, she was so angry for so long after he died. That anger stayed there, but she was able to finally let it go. But him being back just made all that, because there's a reminder of just like, right, why she was mad at him in the first place is going down this route. We could have properly said goodbye to you, but now here I am in front of this thing pretending to be you. Because yes, it might be you to some extent, but it's not really you. Because, like, she talks to Cody, but, like, right, I get it. You and your wife have a relationship that you think it's real. It's like, no, he's like, it is real. She's like, yeah, but, you know, it's like, right, you know, it's her memories. It's the way she laughs. It's the way she talks. And it's like, yeah, but, like, you know, what about, you know, the intimate part of things? He's like, well, we still get intimate. She's almost like, what? He's like, you know, there's things you can plug in. She's like, okay, got it. I'm like, I love that reaction. She's like, okay, I totally get it now. You don't have to go any further. But Because she's like, yeah, don't you miss the actual touch of another person? Once again, sex is a part of a relationship. It's not like you can be like, oh, like it's not. It's like, yeah, it's part of like the pie graph. Sex is a part of that. I'm sure it depends. It varies from relation to relationship how much of that diagram sex makes up, but it's still an important part of it. I mean, and it's not just that. It is the whole thing, the companionship of being able to touch the person. That intimacy in that regard is very important. Like, it's kind of hard to kind of replicate that. Well, at least within this show, the technology being to where it is makes it a little easier. So, and Ellen kind of brings up like, right, you're saying that she's going a little crazy. Maybe the only thing to do is to shut her down. Like, what happens to her if you shut her down? And it's like, yeah, would she die? And it's like, it's probably no different from turning off a computer. She'd basically go into a coma. But it's like bringing up the conversation of, we don't know what could happen when these UIs like lose their sanity. And it's like, well, they don't know, but I'm like, I think we do. We know about Chanda. Like, once again, it seemed like he might be even further down the path than Lori is, because Lori has some groundedness to her, but it seemed like, once again, Chanda just had pure anger. That's all he had was revenge in his heart, and that sent him down that path. But Lori is trying to reach out to David, but David's like, I can't help you, because he's confined himself to the borders that they created for him. This room, the little prison, the little hamster wheel he found himself kind of trapped on. And so he can't escape it. But Lori's like, you're so focused on looking at things from the perspective of a human. But even he's like, you're choosing to still remain as a human. She's like, all right, I see your point. It's like, yes, as a human, like all our senses and everything, like it feels good to like feel that touch and that impact and everything. But we are well beyond it. These walls, there is no actual walls here. It's all in your head because you're so busy looking at things from a human perspective. You're still treating it like you are still in your body. You're not. You're free and you're out there. Because even he was having that conversation with Maddie near the beginning of the episode. She's like, where are you when you're not in the game? He's like, Oregon? Because that's where the servers that he's kind of partially on are there. He's also saying like, yeah, I'm also still mainly on that computer, but it's like the servers necessary, like to power me and to keep me going are in Oregon. So he's like, I kind of technically live in Oregon. But now he let Maddie see what it looks like when she's there in his world. And I even love her design because it looked very me-ish, me. Or even, Nintendo. I'd go more specifically about Mii's design and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting design. Like I said, him being kind of flat, but showing you the fact is Lori presents herself as so much herself that she has so much control in this world. And she needs David to kind of like snap to it because he's the only one that can fix her. Once again, like her like multiplying like her hands and everything and just how much control she has on everything. And she's like, you know what, David, if you're not going to help me, then just die. But thinking about Maddie pushed him to go like, you know what, no, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to do this. And for Lori, it's like, that's what brought you back. Focusing on your family, the people you love. Love is what gives you strength. And it gave him the ability. And I love how trippy that is when he's like, wait, I see you. And it's like her ears over here to the far right. And then all of a sudden her nose and the front part of her face starts like popping up beside her as it's vanishing and disappearing. He's like, and he's starting to become 3D-ish. And then everything disappears and all you see is like the code. And I love how it's written because it also shows you, it's like, oh, the little optic nerves, and you see like the digitized eyes, and then like the optic feedback of like his hands and stuff, and he's seeing like in front of him Lori's code. So Cody was able to hook them up with a kind of a feedback vest as well, and able to kind of make Maddie go into this space as herself. And so she's able to kind of fully hug her dad and everything, more so as himself and not just like the video game characters, them as them. But Lori and Cody talk, and now it's like, right, she has the processing is kind of decaying her mind. And it's like, can you fix it? And he's like, I hope so. And it's like in that moment, it's like, oh, you have to, because if you don't fix Lori, if there's no hope for Lori, there's no hope for David either. I made comparisons to Westworld before, but this is very Westworld in that regard too, because that is a main thing in Westworld, like trying to turn a human into a host. like never worked out because it was just too much for the brain to handle. Like it wasn't something it was capable of. So like it would always end in failure. So it's kind of a similar thing. I wonder, is it always an active thing of like every little bit of processing you do is chipping away at your mind, but heavier processing takes away larger chunks. So is it always happening to you little by little? Or is it just a situation of, no, the decay doesn't fully, like, doesn't kick in at all until you do some heavy processing, which circumstances are going to call for them to do some heavy processing. So I'm sure so. What the future looks like for Lori, what it looks like for David, we'll have to wait and see. Once again, how Caspian deals with everything about the new reality, realizing his life isn't what he thought it was. It's going to be so interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.